Welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We're the news division of United Network, and we're also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news. We do that in lots of different ways. We have stories told through the eyes of our incredible field messengers. We have more in-depth stories that the team and I work on for you guys. And we also have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA, and she comes on as much as she possibly can to update us. She's our wisdom of the boots on the ground and what's really happening in this crazy battle of light versus dark that we're all experiencing right now. That's why the world is so crazy. If you want more information about United Network and who we are, what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. What you're listening to right now, this is a Week in Review podcast, so it's a great way to catch up on any stories you may have missed or to share UNN with non-members, people that may not have heard of UNN before. Most of our content, in fact, all of our content, when we first release it, is just available to our paying members for the first week. And then we do release the information out on YouTube and Rumble. But you know how these sites are, guys. We hope the content stays up. It doesn't always stay up. Sometimes we get strikes. Specifically with episodes of The Rundown, they love to make my videos private when they're always released to the public. So we've got some funky things happening. If you want to make sure you get access to all the content as quickly as possible, I encourage you guys to become a member. With anything that we put out and anything that you are watching or listening to, please think critically. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are specifically trying to deceive people. So that's disinformation. You need to think critically. You need to ask questions. Do your research. Rely on your own internal discernment. And I know we talk about that a lot, but that's because it is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And then when you discover new things, share them with others, because sometimes that's the best invitation for people to really start thinking on their own and not just, taking other people's opinions or believing someone on the TV just because they're on the TV, right? We've got to change the way, people perceive and understand the world. And to do that, we have to talk with one another. All right, as far as announcements go, guys, this is our 150th episode, 150 episode of The Rundown. I really appreciate all your support, and for those of you who have been listening to this podcast for a while, thank you so much. Our first episode was released, this is a fun fact, I had to look it up because I didn't know, on August 28th of 2023. The other thing I wanted to mention is Happy New Year. And you may be wondering, Sunny, it's March 21st. Why are you wishing us a Happy New Year? Well, today happens to be the spring equinox. And no, I'm not part of the deep state. I don't follow, new moons and all this kind of stuff. But for me, the spring equinox is important because I do believe that spring is a natural time for life to begin. So I view it as the new year. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the middle of at least winter, in the northern hemisphere, for us to be celebrating New Year's in January. There's just a major disconnect for me, and it feels much more natural to say Happy New Year at the end of March. So Happy New Year, everyone. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, so our first field messenger report today is from me. I actually was able to do a report and get it out. There's some stuff going on in my neighborhood, and many of you guys know I live in California, which happens to be the largest state population-wise in the United States. California does some really weird things, and water seems to be a big issue out here, and the state is now telling us that we have to conserve water, and part of the process of doing that for anyone that's in a homeowners association is to remove grass that they deem to not be important. So we, over the last, I think this has been going on in my neighborhood for at least a month. Our neighborhood is total trash right now because the landscapers are out there like messing around and, changing the irrigation system. They literally dug out all of our grass. We have a few parks that are still available. These are tiny parks. When I say parks, you're not talking about something big, but little areas where there's like a picnic table or a bench or something like that. So we've got 3 of those in our community, but that area that is anything that's connected to your house, on either side. They don't mess with your backyard because that's on you. But anything considered community grass, they got rid of, except those parks. So I talk about this issue. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we can do. California is not exploring other options of, getting good water to homeowners and to people in general. So this whole thing of we're just going to remove your grass is really, really silly, and it's causing a lot of issues. So that was my field messenger report out of California. All right, Emma out of Spain shows us how to make an amazing brownie. She calls it a Swedish chocolate cake. It kind of looked like a brownie to me. The kladdkaka, I think that's how you pronounce it, something like that. And it looked amazing. Has a nice gooey center, crispy crust. Not really sure ingredient-wise what's different than a brownie. But they actually have a special day, which is November 7th, which was a while ago. I'm sure you can make it any day you want. But it's like a holiday. And people make this dessert. And I'm sure, like I said, you can make it at any time. It looks amazing. And you definitely need a glass of milk when you make this special treat. All right, Rick out of Thailand. He was vacationing in Thailand, and he takes us to the Sanctuary of Truth Temple in Pattaya, Thailand. It is a breathtaking 105-meter wooden masterpiece. So this is a building that you can go into. He says it was built in 1981 without a single nail. This is one of those videos you have to see to believe. It ties in with Eastern philosophy and spirituality. But yeah, they used wooden joints and pegs. It is highly detailed. You could probably look on Google, search it up, and see it for yourself. But it's also interesting, I thought, because he said it's near the sea. And you would think anything made of wood would kind of decompose and whatever, but this building is amazing, and it's also unfinished. They still have artists come in and help design for it, which really makes it a living work of art. It's absolutely beautiful. You have to check it out. Amy, who is in Puerto Rico, talks about, she's actually at Dorado Beach, Puerto Rico, and she's talking about nature. Specifically, she got this incredible footage of these brown pelicans, and these pelicans dive down into the water to catch fish. And I don't know how she did it, but I believe this is her own footage. I mean, honestly, this could be something on some natural, geographic channel or something like that. But these incredible pelicans swoop down, and she talks about their beaks and how they scoop up the fish and then they swallow it whole. Kind of sounds like my husband. That's kind of what he does when he eats. I'm just totally kidding. My sons do that as well. So anyway, she talks about that. And then she also mentions that the iguanas, which are not native to that area, are starting to take over. They're considered invasive. So when in Puerto Rico, check out the pelicans and the iguanas. All right, Emma, another story from Emma, because she talked about those amazing brownies, talks about the beaches of Fuerteventura, again in Spain, and how these sand artists take over, not in a bad way, but they create these amazing sculptures. And this isn't part of a specific event. This is just what people do, and they come from different places. She actually talks with a sand artist who shows up daily. And I don't think he lives there the whole year round, but for a few months, it's like every day goes out and he makes a sculpture. He's not necessarily getting paid to do this, although you can donate to these people. They usually have something set up for that. But how incredible is that? And she says a lot of times it happens at night because I guess that's the best time, especially if it's hot out, I would imagine, But these things just kind of pop up and you get to see all the cool artistry that's involved. So thank you, Emma, for that story. Monica out of Romania shows us a beautiful Romanian dance. It is called the Hora, and it is considered a traditional dance. It's an integral part of Romanian culture. And it looks like this was done at some sort of festival, but there were men and women I don't know their ages. They could have been younger, but they were gathered around in a circle, sometimes holding hands, sometimes always touching each other in some way, though, right? So maybe their arms, their hands, something like that. And they would change directions. So they would go around in the circle in one direction. Sometimes they'd be kicking, doing various moves, and then they switch direction. You got to really know what you're doing, I guess. It doesn't turn into like bumper cars or something like that. But a very beautiful dance. And it's just nice to see a little bit of other people's culture. All right, Dorothy out of Montana, which is a state in the U.S., gives us an update. There's an oil refinery in her area. This is an area that she grew up in. And it's very strange, but she drove past it and she noticed that operations for that oil refinery have completely stopped. Now, this ties in with what we've been learning on the GIA report. If you go back and you listen to last week's report, or if you've already heard it, Kim specifically talked about there not being an oil issue. The oil is there. The issue is they're cutting off the refinery. So there's no way to process the oil so that we can actually use it as petrol or gas. So that's the issue that mainstream media isn't telling you about. And this is proof. So according to Dorothy, she says, she grew up in this area. She would always drive past this or go past this and you could smell it. The smell, it's not a very pleasant smell. She said there were different lights that would be blinking. And as a kid, she really liked to look at the lights and all the steam that comes out of the pipes that are, part of the whole building. And you don't see any of that. You also don't see cars or trucks or anything like that around. I mean, this thing is shut down. So, kind of goes to show you, the stuff that we talk about in the GIA report. It's always good to kind of get confirmation of that stuff happening. But this is happening in her area in Montana. And Ricky out of Indiana tells us about a tornado that hit northern Indiana. It actually hit on March 10th, so a little bit ago. And it created several other tornadoes. There was record-breaking hail, and he shows us some of the damage that was caused. And I think, unfortunately, a couple people did lose their life in that major tornado. Maya from Italy. Well, you guys know Easter is coming up if you follow Easter. And, one of the traditions is those Easter bunny things. Sometimes they're like stuffies. Sometimes they're made of chocolate. So Maya went to this factory. I'll call it a factory. Yeah, in Italy. And they specialize in all kinds of handmade Easter goodies. So she got to see how some of these things were made. And then, of course, there was an incredible gift shop that she went through. I loved, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but when they make cups out of chocolate, like little, like shot glasses, not that you have to have alcohol in it, but I was at a winery once where they had a special wine that they sold. I can't remember what it was called now. There was a specific name for it, but it was sold in one of these chocolate cups. And I was like, oh, that's such a good idea. And then you can eat the cup afterwards. So they had that in the gift shop. They had lots of different types of eggs. Some of these were larger eggs that looked like they were hand painted or designed. If they were edible, I'm not sure. But again, just nice to kind of get a behind the scenes look at how chocolate is made in Italy. All right, RK Surjit out of India takes us to the Mother's Market. This is a 500-year-old market in Manipur, India. It's run entirely by women. That's why they call it the Mother's Market. It is the largest of its kind in Asia. And we just get a look at what it looks like if you were to attend. So they have these amazing stalls. He says it takes place mainly in 3 large buildings, but there were also people on the street outside. But they sell everything from apparel to jewelry, baskets, fish, pottery, amazing vegetables. I don't know how they get these vegetables to be so big and so green or red or whatever they're supposed to be, but it looked pretty cool. All right, Rick out of Singapore. I think this is the second story from Rick. Yeah, see, he was in Thailand. Now he's in Singapore. Rick is getting around. Good for him. In this story, he takes us to Gardens by the Bay. It's located in the heart of Singapore. It is a flower dome. So what I mean by that is there's this large, beautiful natural dome, and then there's all of these beautiful plants and flowers within it. And he says it spans 105 hectares. It's home to more than 1.5 million plants from every single continent. Rick, by the way, you did an amazing job with your scripting for this. The words that you used and how you put everything together, it was very poetic. Some of these plants were so beautiful. I was like, is that real? You know how sometimes you see a plant and you're like, gosh, that bloom is like perfect. And you go to like feel it like in the store. Is that a real plant or is that fake? It's kind of like the Garden of Eden, what I would imagine, the Garden of Eden look like. So thank you, Rick, for that report. Moving on to some of the in-depth stories that the team and I created for you guys this week. First, we are talking about fake discounts. These are the retail world's version of sleight of hand. They dazzle shoppers with bold 50% off tags that often hide a simple trick. By inflating original prices or timing markups just before big sales, companies make deals look far better than they really are, tapping into the psychology to create urgency and excitement. And one of the tricks they use is the countdown clock. Here's more on that.
Only 2 hours left. Sale ends today. You've seen those timers, ticking down with flashing red numbers. But here's the trick. The timer often resets for every new visitor. The urgency isn't real. It's designed to trigger FOMO, the fear of missing out. Your brain shifts from logic to panic. Whenever you see a ticking clock online, wait a day. If the deal still exists, you just caught a fake rush.
While these tactics can sometimes cross into deceptive advertising and even spark lawsuits, they remain widespread across industries. In the end, what feels like a win at checkout is often just clever marketing dressed up as savings. Well, feeding your pet might feel simple, but behind the bowl is a massive, fast-growing industry where convenience, marketing, and profit can sometimes outweigh transparency and quality. With limited regulation, recurring recalls, and confusing ingredient labels, it's not always clear what pets are really eating.
A brand new study has just come out. Commercial dog food contains alarming levels of lead, mercury, and other serious contaminants. The dry pet food, it contains 3 to 13 times more contaminants than any of the human foods that are tested, right? 3 to 13 times more. Compared to human food, compared to people, our dogs are consuming 3 to 7 times more amount of heavy metals each day. Like up to 7 times more. And they wonder why our dogs are sick so often.
As concerns grow, many owners are rethinking their choices, exploring alternatives like wet, freeze-dried, or even homemade meals. In the end, staying informed and choosing food carefully is key to making sure pets get the nutrition they truly need. Your gut microbiome is like a hidden ecosystem inside your body, made up of trillions of microorganisms that influence everything from digestion and immunity to metabolism and mood. When it's balanced and diverse, it helps keep your body running smoothly. But factors like poor diet, stress, antibiotics, and environmental exposures can throw it off, leading to inflammation and health issues.
This defense system, our microbiome, I call them the gut buddies, have to have certain foods to eat to not only foster themselves, but like we mentioned before, feed us and feed us and the wall of our gut and our brain, our heart, all these really important compounds. And in the last 50 years, we've completely voided most of the food we eat of these compounds.
The good news is your gut can respond quickly to positive changes, meaning small lifestyle shifts can have a big impact on your overall health. Hospitals are meant to heal, but widespread antibiotic overuse is turning them into breeding grounds for dangerous superbugs that are increasingly hard to treat. Driven by caution, time pressure, and sometimes financial incentives, antibiotics are often prescribed unnecessarily or in excess, allowing resistant bacteria to survive, spread, and evolve. This not only raises healthcare costs, but also puts patients at higher risk of prolonged illness, complications, and even death, highlighting the growing urgency of more responsible antibiotic use.
We all know that a good thing gone too far can turn into a bad thing, and that's kind of what this study shows. It shows that emergency room providers who thought that the patient might have sepsis or could have sepsis, not septic shock or needs the ICU, but could potentially have sepsis, over-treated patients with antibiotics or gave them too broad spectrum antibiotics most of the time on admission. What's most of the time? Over 80% of the time, it was either you didn't need antibiotics or you got way too broad of a spectrum of antibiotic. Now, I think that this just goes with the metrics and all the things that we have to hit. And so what do ER providers do? They just give a broad spectrum antibiotic and admit to the hospitalist. I get it. As a hospitalist, I take these patients on with open arms. It's just something to know that this is where we've come to. And likely, unless the patient has septic shock, you probably don't need these broad spectrum antibiotics. So we can be a little bit narrower and a little more precise in our antibiotic treatment.
Rickshaws and pedicabs have evolved from hand-pulled carts into a global urban transport staple, offering an eco-friendly and accessible way to navigate crowded cities. Now, while they provide jobs for millions and they can work well in tight spaces, their growing presence has brought challenges like traffic congestion, safety risks, unclear pricing, and low wages for drivers.
So what we need are fair fares. Well, I bumped into a couple of tourists who'd come to London, had a lovely ride on that, and then the pedicab driver was demanding £580 to cycle from Old Street to Oxford Circus. Now that's a 20-minute bike ride. £580 is extortionate. We're going to bring in fair pricing. We're going to make sure the vehicles are safe for people using them. The drivers themselves have got criminal records checks and the vehicles have insurance. So if something happens, people are covered. We need to professionalize this to make sure it works for people, that they can enjoy going around and have a bit of fun too.
As a result, many cities are introducing regulations to better manage how they operate while preserving their role in everyday transportation. Less lethal weapons like tasers, rubber bullets, and beanbag rounds are meant to reduce fatalities, but they can still cause serious injury or death if misused.
What weapons have LA law enforcement been using against protesters and the press in the LA riots? And should they be using them at all? Foam baton rounds launch 5 hard discs that are usually used to disperse groups. They break apart when they hit a hard surface. The LAPD also uses foam rounds, which are hard plastic bullets with a foam material at the tip. They're designed to bruise but can cause broken bones. Stun grenades create chaos through light and sound to disorient crowds. Stinger grenades produce a loud sound, then release pieces of rubber everywhere. Tear gas is a fine powder designed to irritate your skin, eyes, and nose, but can also cause other health problems. A University of Minnesota study from 2020 found that 83% of people exposed to tear gas reported reproductive health issues. All of these are known as less lethal weapons. They're designed to have temporary and reversible effects on crowds after de-escalation techniques have been used by law enforcement. But less lethal weapons are far from harmless and have been linked to serious injuries and fatalities.
Cases from protests and court investigations in the U.S. and Australia show that without strict policies, proper training, and oversight, these tools can be just as dangerous as they are intended to prevent. True safety relies not on labels, but on responsible use, accountability, and thorough officer preparation. Extracurricular activities. Well, moms and dads, you know what we're talking about here, right? They can offer valuable learning and social experiences, but overloading kids with back-to-back lessons, sports, and clubs can backfire, hurting their social skills, independence, and free playtime. Here's a soundbite from a parent because the struggle is real.
I consider myself a pretty new mom. My oldest is 7. To be honest, it stresses me out a little bit when I think about the potential that is locked inside of my children, and it's up to me to find their passions and talents and put them into the right things and find the right teachers and programs, because what if I have an Olympian on my hands? It could be my fault that I dropped the ball on a sign up or something. But in Jessica Smart's book, Let Them Be Kids, she has a section on extracurricular activities. And she said she always asked herself this question when it came to signing her kids up for stuff. She said, what character trait am I trying to instill in my child with this activity? And I think when we can look at it in that way, it's easier for us to make these decisions. I think as parents, sometimes we just go with the herd and we don't realize what we're doing or why we're doing it. We just do it because everyone else is doing it.
Now, beyond the stress and cost for families, too many structured activities can leave children and parents feeling exhausted rather than enriched. Balancing schedules with creativity, listening to the kids' interests, and changing it, adjusting it, the making room for unstructured time, all of that is key to supporting healthy growth and genuine enjoyment. Dog attacks remain a serious concern in New Zealand, with hospitalizations and complaints rising over the years. While some breeds appear more often in incidents, experts stress that training and owner responsibility are key factors.
29,000 people in New Zealand were injured by dogs in 1 year. According to ACC data, there were 29,220 dog-related injuries last year. Almost 14,120 were literal dog bites. Adults were usually bitten on arms and legs, children on face, head, and neck. Now, injury rates are rising, and they are higher in lower-income communities and within Maori population. Now, think about that. We only hear about the most horrific cases. Meanwhile, 13,094 dogs are classified as menacing, 679 are classified as dangerous, and Auckland Council alone impounded 10,000 dogs in 2025, a record number.
Victims can face lasting physical and emotional trauma, and councils often act only after these attacks occur. Prevention efforts focus on promoting responsible ownership, early intervention, and education to keep both people and pets safe. The global wine industry is facing a perfect storm of challenges: changing tastes, shrinking traditional customer bases, rising costs, stricter regulations, and climate-related production risks. Younger drinkers are leaning toward healthier or alternative beverages, while older markets decline, pushing some growers to reduce or abandon vineyards.
Wine is an almost $300 billion industry in the US. But it's not just vineyard owners getting that money. Wine and wine-related industries employ almost 2 million people nationwide. And a lot of those jobs are ones you might not expect, like printing or shipping, transportation, accounting, and more. And that's not even counting businesses like bars and restaurants and hotels that rely on wine sales. And those wine regions I mentioned, like California, well, they rely on wine-based tourism for $17 billion a year. And a lot of that money goes straight towards local communities. And even if you don't work in wine, sell wine, or buy wine, you're affected, because over $20 billion in taxes are contributed by the wine industry every year. That's a ton of communities and industries that all rely on that sweet, sweet wine money.
Prices have risen and demand has dropped, putting pressure on economies that rely on wine production. In response, wineries are innovating, embracing eco-friendly practices, low or no alcohol options, online sales, and social media to stay relevant and connect with new audiences. So as I mentioned earlier, today is the official equinox, spring equinox, if you look on the calendar. But the equinox, according to the deep state, lasts for 3 days before and 3 days after. At least I think that's the schedule. Either that or it's like for a full month before and a full month after. I get this confused with their new moons and full moons. You know, it's very difficult to keep track of this as the deep state, truly. So they have been, quote unquote, celebrating the spring equinox for a while. And I'm sure driving Kim crazy with all of their antics, because this is a time where they would use this. They think that they're going to get more power. They're going to get their financial system back. All of these things are going to happen in their favor. At least that is their hope. And it never does. But try as they may. So Kim wasn't able to put out a video. She was hoping to get something out today, but as of now, that hasn't happened. She did release a statement yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and read that for you now. It says, "Good evening and happy equinox. The war between factions and against us and Source has been in full swing for the last few days. They are trying everything in their power, what is left of it, to maintain or gain some kind of control. Today being the equinox has been very busy, as it has been the last few days. Hopefully, the dust will settle by morning and I can give you a full update. Meanwhile, there is still a portal where Source miracles are born. It happens every day in small ways, even though they are trying to prevent it. See you in the morning." Okay, so hopefully Kim will get a report out soon and we'll be able to report on that for next week. That is the plan. But I love what Kim had to say about, Source is still here. And you can call it a portal. You can, say that, God or source is answering prayer, whatever your terminology is. She's absolutely right that amazing things are happening. You cannot lose your faith in this process. And I've said it a million different times, but trust me, I really do take my own advice on this. What's going on in Iran, what's happening with Israel, the Epstein files, which apparently people aren't really talking about right now, whatever it is, it's all noise. And if you focus on that, that's what you create in your reality. And I know it's hard to ignore the noise, but that's exactly what I'm going to encourage you to do right now. Because when you take the noise out, it doesn't affect you. And you could say, oh, Sunny, you're just, not listening to reality, or you're just blocking out reality. Well, I guess in a way, because when I block it out, it's not part of my reality. It's not just me saying, la, 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 I don't want to hear you. No, I'm literally jumping timelines when I do that. I am taking that out of my reality. And I can tell you that in my reality, that is not a thing. Those headlines that you see have no bearing on me. I am not emotionally triggered by any of that. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, look at me. I'm saying this because you can do that too. There's nothing special about me being able to do that. You can do this too. But the more that you focus on that, the more it's going to come up in your life. Not only the algorithm on your computer, on YouTube, or whatever social media, but just in your life in general. So if you don't like that stuff that you're seeing, which I can't stand, I can't even really go on YouTube anymore. Trying to do research on stories is almost impossible because I just can't stand the stuff that I'm seeing on there. Even when I'm researching stories, I have to block a lot of that out. And you can do that too. And the more you do, the less it impacts you, because I know they're talking about some horrible stuff. When they were talking about all the Epstein file stuff, that is nasty, nasty stuff. It's true, it's real, and it can be a little bit scary. And I'm not saying that that isn't horrible, but I'm saying that does not have to be part of your reality. When you distance yourself from that, you lose the emotional connection to it. Because you being all upset about whatever's going on in Iran and, however many people unfortunately have died as a result of this conflict, that is not helping the situation. You getting all up in arms and fighting with your best friend about this, or your parents or whatever, none of that is helping. None of that is helping. Focus on the things that make you happy, that you want more of in your life. That's how the universe works. So I'm going to step off my soapbox right now. But I really do take my own advice on this. And to Kim's point, Source God is doing amazing things right now. Let him. Don't tell him by your actions and what you're focused on that you want more war in your life, or nasty things that celebrities are doing to little girls and little boys. Don't focus on that. Then you're not going to have that in your life. Out of sight, out of mind. It truly is. Okay, I will see you guys, or I won't hear you guys. You'll hear me next week. Thanks for listening to The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.